Welcome back to the Berg Podcast. Thanks for joining us today, man. That's I think 2 or maybe 3 episodes in a row that I have messed up the intro.
I was gone for I think 1 or 2.
Yeah.
So, but the last one we did together, you definitely messed up.
Oh gosh. Well, welcome back. Regardless, you're here at the Berg Podcast. Thanks for joining us today. Hopefully, you didn't turn it off immediately after you heard me do that. With me today is Ford.
Hey, how are you?
And Dan.
Hey, everybody.
And today we're talking about what's in a name, not specifically building a brand. Well, I guess that's part of it, right? Building a brand. But what does a brand mean, and why is brand recognition important?
Right. And I think this was too much time off for the holidays and stuff like that, but got me thinking about the fact that we use, pretty much everybody in the world now uses some kind of a cup for their coffee that's probably has some great, tells you great things about how long it keeps something warm or
Yeah,
something
like
cold.
a travel cup, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Everybody's got their own. It's probably got a logo from somewhere on it. And what it struck me was, for a while, there's this real high-end brand that I refused to buy because I just felt that it was too expensive.
Yeah. And
then they had one little thing different that I wasn't aware of until later. You can put them in the dishwasher.
All bets were off.
Yes. And now, over Christmas, we threw away like 10 of them that we had laying around the house just because we used to have a lineup by the kitchen sink that at night you'd have to wash all of these cups because they wouldn't be put in the dishwasher. And it made me think like what the difference is. You know, it's like, okay, they're more expensive or whatever, and they have a name brand, but they have something that's better.
Right.
And then it made me think about things in our industry, that there is brands that at one point were the best, and now they still charge you like they are the best, but other people have come up and caught up to them, and they are no longer keeping their difference maker alive.
Yeah, the funny thing about branding is like, I know for us as an organization, we spent a couple of years really trying to like hone in on our brand, so to speak, right? Our logo, our image, where we put it, how we put it on things, you know, making sure that internally our folks knew like what we stand for and what we hope to stand for publicly.
What's behind the logo?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. What's behind the colors and everything else, and so you know that felt like the purpose. It felt like the why, right? Being able to tell the why. But what gets interesting about branding, and we talked about this a little bit, is unless there's like value behind what it is you're presenting, nobody cares what it looks like, right? You can be very shiny and polished, and no one will remember you if you haven't produced or provided something that is meaningful.
Yeah, and I think that actually, you know, ties to one of our projects that we're currently doing. We had a project a year or so ago with this one client, and for all intents and purposes, it did not go smoothly. That's the polite way of putting it. And they recommended us to another client. And I'm like, what? Like, that job did not go well for anybody involved. It wasn't just us, but the job just didn't go well. And they're like, yeah, you know, that job didn't go well, but you did what you said you were going to do, right? Which boils down a lot of our core values, things of that nature. And it was just interesting that like, you know, yeah, the job didn't go well. Usually when jobs don't go well, that's maybe the last time you're going to talk to that particular client, just because, you know, tensions run high and stuff like that. So it's like, what is the thing that people are going to see that they want to, it'll tie to, you know. And then the secondary part is, how do you maintain that? Right, like, we've spent these years trying to create this. And is it tougher to create it, or is it tougher to maintain it? And I think we're starting the maintain it phase, and that actually has higher expectations than creating it did.
Yeah, for sure. Because when we're young, like, all we want to do is have people know who we are, right? We want that name to be recognized. We want people to know when they see our trucks who we are, et cetera. But now that happens to some extent. I mean, we're not, you know, regionally or in our area. I think we're fairly well known for who we are and what we do. But now that happens, you sort of created this bar, like not to fall below, right? And when you do, people,
People are glad to tell you about it.
Right? They're in a hurry. They have no problem telling you that you fell off.
Yeah, it's funny. We the other thing we talk about with branding is when you go through the process as we branded, and we tried to identify what were the things that differentiated us, what were the things that made us different from a client standpoint, from an employee standpoint, all these things. And you work on it and you look at it, but it's really a lot more difficult than you initially think, because initially you come up with an idea and you say, this is who we are. And then you got to look at it from everybody's angle. Is that the best? Is it really what you are? Is it what you are some of the time? So you get to some end result, which I think we did, as you guys said, and we effectively tried to put together a picture from all sides of who we are as a company, who we are as an employee, who we are as a subcontractor, all of those things, and who we are as just human beings. But then you got to try and live up to that every day and make hard decisions in a business world, but holding true to those specific feelings, and there's jobs we're doing right now that we're working through some difficulties on. And that's the ones that always test you. You know what I mean? If a job goes, you have good prints and good weather and good timing and everything shows up and everything goes great, everybody's happy and it's great, but it a lot of companies could have done that. It's when you run into a job when you have to stand behind it and you have to say, we're going to do what we said we were going to do, and be honest and transparent. And if you have to take a little bit of a hit, you take a little bit of a hit. And that's when it gets hard. It gets hard to hold the line of who you want to be when it's not advantageous to you.
One, I think too, that is the secondary part of that is that, the company has a brand and all this stuff now and our core values and all the things we want to, but, we were talking about this to something else today, like business development. Everybody that is part of our team is a business development person. Because, we can have people, we go out and look for jobs or, bid things. But, what if there's a guy in the field, maybe we're doing a road job, and the guy's having a rough day, and some average Joe's driving by, and words are exchanged heatedly or some kind of hand gesture or whatever it might be. And it's just like a average Joe, but that average Joe might be somebody that would want to hire us in the future, and then all of a sudden they have this image. One little interaction can go great, and one little interaction, so that's where it really becomes that maintenance piece, because of the fact that, as you said, once you set that bar somewhere, everyone's constantly checking to see if you're staying at that bar.
It's like the same argument with trust, right? And maybe that is to some extent what we're talking about. Like, it's a lot more difficult to build trust than it is to break a trust. It only takes a lot of times one incident or even the feeling of being wronged to sort of break a trust circle, and that might be a little bit what we're talking about, right?
Well, we were talking about it yesterday as far as a partner we have.
Mm-hmm.
And how when you develop a certain, trust level, and you have a brand expectation, and you look at that group and you see them through a certain lens. But if they do a couple things, one thing, a couple things, whatever it is, but enough to get your attention, your focus, just to have you pivot and actually look at their current actions, their current behaviors, their current way that they're doing business. And all of a sudden, if you notice it and it seems out of line with who you thought they were or who you hoped they would be, because sometimes it's not even that they said they were that, it's what you were expecting
What you
them
wanted,
to be.
yeah.
What you wanted them to be. And and all of a sudden you start to see other things. Ford always says to us about we have to be sure that we pick our heads up, that each person in the company picks their heads up and looks at where you're going. Don't just, because and there's your double-edged sword, right? Because I love the just do your job idea. You know what I mean? And that doesn't mean that I'm talking down to people. It means everybody's job is mission critical. That's why you're here. You're here because we couldn't exist if you didn't do your job. So you have to do your job. But at the same time, you don't want to be so directly focused on what you're doing in that moment that you're not seeing the bigger picture around you to maybe make a better decision or help somebody, or even just look out for trouble that you're going to run into yourself, you know? So that's one of those things that if we have to be aware, and we have to, also be fair and say, like, is it a reasonable expectation that we're putting on somebody? In another, like, kind of funny example, but I think ties to it, as we talked about, we have a job, that broke ground not long ago, local in Morgantown, right on the main street. And all of us are driving by it, and we're evaluating in a snapshot every time we go by how effectively we're working there, which is such a crazy thing to do. You know what I mean? Like, in the one day we were talking about it, I drove by and it was 6:50 something, before 7. And they were all there, and they were having a meeting, and they had prints out, and I was like, it's great. Early in the morning, they're ready to go. And then a different day I drove by and it was late, and I remember they were grading. I almost stopped to take pictures because the lights were on, because of the time of year it is. Guys are out there grading and it's dark. You know what I mean? It wasn't the same day, but in my mind, when I put that together, they were there before and it was dark working. And I came back and they were still working because they were engaged enough that they had to get this done. Now, Ford and I are talking, and then, you were also in the conversation, but it started out with, I think, you talking to Ford, and then I jumped in. And Ford's perspective and your perspective was, you drove by and the site was completely flat and graded and not a lot going on. And then you came by 2 days later and the site's completely flat and graded and there's nothing going on. Are we doing anything there? You know what I mean? And that was the same site. You know what I mean? But I happened to see them at the time when they were doing something. And you happened to be there at a point where, either because of weather or other reasons, we weren't going, or we weren't doing anything in that moment. Or, I found out later it was structures weren't landed yet. So we were a little bit ahead of schedule. But it was the same job, the same equipment, the same people. But the snapshot that we took when we saw it was different. And that's sort of what we got to remember when everybody's evaluating us and looking at us and judging, are we who we say we are? They're doing it in little snapshots, they don't get to look at the big picture. We have that luxury as being here all the time, as employees, as team members, right, that we see it. But to the outside world, it's just a snapshot of what they saw in that moment.
You only get to really create that through history, right? I mean, we know because of our history. Dan, we actually talked about it a few minutes ago. You'll have a 10-year anniversary coming up, and so you've seen the trajectory, you've witnessed who we are, and the consistency tells the story. But if someone else doesn't get that same perspective, they have a much different loyalty factor.
For sure.
Well, there's like that other potential client that, they've seen us around in their work area, and so they wanted to reach out, but then somebody else told them that they didn't think we were doing that type of work.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, so that's literally a conversation that was had somewhere, which could have been 5 minutes. Driving by and seeing a truck somewhere could have been 2 minutes. And that created a story for them that we then had to correct. But thankfully, we had the opportunity to correct it because they might have never reached out anyways. So it's that funny thing where there is no downtime in relationship to that. Somebody going too fast in a company truck, or the company truck being dirty, or their company truck putting dirt on the road. Like those little tiny things that, again, as you're saying, in the grand scheme of things, aren't wonderful, but they're not a big make or break scenario. But for the person that saw it, that wanted to create a story behind it without understanding the full story, that was their interaction with that brand.
How do you control that? So, I mean, let's not talk about construction for a second. You've developed a small amount of loyalty for a product, right? You talked about your coffee cups that you started to like. What would that company do to make you want to stop using their product?
Yeah, I think it boiled down to if it wasn't doing what I assumed that they were doing. That's
simple functions for the most part, right? You assume you can carry your coffee in it, it's not going to leak. Right. You assume it's going to stay hot for long enough for you to drink it at a normal temperature, or maybe too hot. And for you, the tipping point was the washing, right?
But that's what's funny, right? And that's sort of what we're talking about here. That
it's not the big things.
It's not, but it's also so. In this exact example, right? If we stick with this one, because I have something else in my head, but we stick with this one. Is okay. So that coffee cup that Ford now likes, and he got rid of all the other ones, and he has that one. And 5 years from now, that coffee cup continues to do exactly what it does. It still works the same, keeps things just as hot. You can wash it in the dishwasher. And we're going to go buy new coffee cups for the guys because we haven't bought mugs in a while.
Right.
And we can buy those. Or the other brands that we always bought now have realized that there's benefit and it's a differentiator. So now all of them are fully glass line, double thermal insulated, and you can wash them all in the dishwasher. Do we then pay however much it is ridiculous for this brand name cup? Or do we get the other cup because it does the exact same thing? You know, it closed that differentiator. So it becomes so difficult because you separate yourself. And then if it's effective, people will follow. And once they follow, you then lose the benefit of that differentiation. And the branding may help you. But at that point, you're purely relying on the actual branding and not actually on any differentiator. So it becomes a constant thing. And then you pair that with what's happened with social media, for better or for worse, in how we and everyone else is using it. And you get these snapshot pictures that are very pointed, you know, and we've talked about it with the algorithms and how they work and all those things. And so it becomes really tricky to maintain because you're trying to maintain being who you are, but also if you've created a gap, to maintain that gap and not get caught, you know, because otherwise if you get caught, then now you're just hoping that nobody changes, nobody notices that you're not different.
Well, and that is, you know, we were talking about at the beginning, like setting the bar of where you're going to stay at. But I think part of that is that bar has to continue to rise, as exhausting as that is. You know, because that's what we were talking about earlier. Some of those brands that they raised the bar, they were the top people.
Right.
They didn't do the work to continue to build upon that foundation. They rested on their laurels, and everybody else, as you were saying, the people, you know, hey, they're doing something good. Let's figure out.
They caught up.
The other brands caught up.
Yeah.
But the problem is that main brand that started the first thing, they keep raising their price like they are still much better, but they're not. There's no difference left. Like that's what you said with the coffee cups. If those other brands came up and do the same thing, the brand name isn't worth anything because they're not doing anything better than anyone else is.
It's so funny because you can make it so many things. And this is something I was always actually interested in.
Yeah.
Was how many things we call by the brand name that was the original thing.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Right.
Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you have Kleenex.
Yeah. Kleenex.
Kleenex is a brand, Saran wrap.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Reynolds wrap. You know what I mean? Like you could just go one and you don't even think about it, that all these things that you call the brand name, and the brand name does not have the same pull anymore because other things have caught up. Is there really a difference?
You buy the product that you know by the name, but not necessarily the brand.
That you know by the name, and that, you know, the original patent is not worth as much. Whereas something like another funny one is like, if you had told me 5 years ago, and I don't have them again now, but that I would buy like a Simple Human trash can, like I would have told you were insane. And then you had, or I guess it's 10 years ago. And
I don't
then
even know
you
what
had
it
kids.
is. What is that?
So it's just like a more expensive trash can, but ironically, it has nothing to do with the trash can. They had like the best trash bags. And I said to Aaron, like Aaron would try to buy cheap trash bags.
Okay.
And I'd say, that's great, except you don't take the trash out. And
When the handles break every time.
If one of these bags breaks while I'm trying to take this trash out, I'm going to be so aggravated. So just pay a little bit more and get a trash bag that's not going to break.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Now, we don't have Simple Human anymore, but it is still a sticking point that like Aaron will buy name brand trash, or I will, on Amazon, so that she can't buy the cheap ones on me, because if it breaks, it's going to be.
You don't run out. You don't need more. So
if I don't run out, I don't need more.
Are you? I would not consider myself like a brand loyalist in most ways. I don't know. I like. I feel like maybe it's just my nature, but I'm always looking for like a deal. You know, so. Right, would you say you're I mean, you got the simple trash? Or
I think that Are you
a little bit of a brand loyalist?
I think that as I've gotten older, I've become that way.
Okay.
But to Ford's point, if I see value, like with the coffee mug, I had the coffee mug. I don't know that I had it first, but I definitely had one before Ford because someone gave it to me, because we've talked about how cheap we all are. I'm not paying for that cup.
Right. Yeah.
So, and they gave it to me. It was Total Rental.
Yeah.
So Total Rental gave me one of these cups.
Yeah.
And I had it for, I think, 3 years. I mean, that thing, I dropped it off of everything you could think of. You know, it wobbled a little bit, but it still worked perfect, you know? So from there on, I would be like, well, why? As long as someone will give me one. I mean, I bought Aaron one because I was like, if I can't break this cup will last longer than our, you know.
Yeah. I've given them as gifts.
Yeah.
Because of the perceived value.
Yeah. See, and I mean, like Ford knows with the boots, like, so I guess, I mean, to a point, I've
Yeah,
become
thought
that
of it.
where I like certain boots because I think they'll last longer, but it has sort of played out. So
Yeah.
like
Oh,
I'm not
it's-
loyal to a brand because of the brand, but if I buy something and I think it is better and it lasts,
That's what you know.
Well, that's
right?
the thing,
That's
though.
what
That,
I
like
Yeah.
you're loyal till they're not loyal. If you want
Yeah.
to really look at it, right? Like, I
Mhm.
mean, you got that kind of boot because you had, my sunglasses. I've bought. I don't even want to count how many pairs of the same brand because the very first time I bought from them, they did a good job of backing up service on that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I've continued to buy them, and they haven't had a down. But the minute that they would cut their quality, I don't create that loyalty any longer.
Right.
right.
But once I have something I like, and I know that it's about familiarity for me. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
they did a good job. My last pair of shoes were good with them, so I'm gonna get the next pair. But if the next pair, the bottoms fall off in 3 months, well, then
Right. Yeah.
Well, then I'll
the
change.
market's back open again, people.
Yeah. No, I get that for sure. And I think I actually am maybe more of like a brand evangelist than a brand loyalist. I don't really care until I find something that I love. And then I tell everybody, I'm like, you've got to try this. It's amazing.
Well, and I think that's too, like with, back to the people, I spend a lot of time making sure that I am the same person every day.
Yeah.
Because that matters to people. When people have somebody that they're working with that is unpredictable, that creates chaos and challenge. So creating that, straight line, even if it's a slight incline, but trying to create that just because
Mhm.
people want to know what they're getting at all times. When people have challenges and they can't read what someone else is doing, it becomes an issue. And it's the same thing with products and brands.
Yeah, right.
You want
We
them to
like-
be improving and upgrading,
Yeah.
but
we like predictability, right?
Predictability makes life smoother.
Yeah, we want to know what to expect. I think that's human nature.
Yeah. But I mean, it is an interesting, there's a reason there's an entire, an entire market.
Yeah.
That it's their job is to try and manage this. Did you see recently that this is a big push? There's a lot going on with energy and everything else.
Mhm.
Did you see they're trying to push that all gas burning stoves, like cooktops
Oh,
and ranges, they may try and outlaw them, which
Oh.
is insane. I don't know how you do that because you'd have to take everybody's stove away, but maybe they'll
Yeah.
just make it that you can't buy new
you
ones.
can't eat out then, I guess, any longer.
is this legislation happening in California or?
It's starting at the federal government level, which is
Oh.
not surprising right now. But
Mhm.
and I was talking to Aaron about it, and I said they're going to go with that by burning a flame in the house, you're burning up oxygen, you make unhealthy air. New houses don't breathe the way old houses do. You're potentially poisoning your own air. That's what they're going with. But as I tried to look at it openly, and I read a couple articles about it, I'm not saying they're right or wrong, but I am saying as soon as I looked that since they said 1919 or 1920, the gas lobbyists started coming up with things that they've been pushing to tell you how safe gas is for cooking in the house.
Mhm.
Like that's the saying. Now you're cooking with gas because it's better, right? And I was like, well, hold on, wait a minute. I'm tied to. I always like having gas, ranges
Yeah.
and cooktops because I've been told that's the best one. But do I actually know that it's the best one? Yes, all the chefs you always see cook with it, but what if that was because
Have you cooked on an electric stovetop?
I have, I did not like it. But to be fair, Aaron will tell you that every time I make bacon, it wouldn't matter what I cook on.
didn't
I'm
matter.
going to set off a smoke alarm because if you just turn it up on high, you will clearly cook more quickly and better.
All right, yeah,
And that's not true. I know that's not true, and yet I turn up the heat anyway.
yeah, I get that.
So.
I don't know. I don't know if I buy that. I've used both, and
I think gas is better. I'm just making the point that what if they
what if they do? Like,
what if they were so good at
what
branding?
if we were duped? Right?
Right. What if they were so good at branding that now
Right.
you're not willing to pick your head up and accept that could be better? Maybe it is. Maybe I'm not.
I mean, yeah, I think what you're saying, though, is that our whole world right now, maybe more than ever, you're inundated from all angles with
Mhm.
stuff that at this point you have a difficult time trusting that there isn't an alternative reason behind why you're hearing that.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to.
I mean, they said that there's this one company out there that it's some big company. They have they have communication people for your customer service all around the country, and when you dial into the 1-800 number, they literally will route that call so that way, whatever accent from the area you're from, you're talking to somebody the same to make it a better transaction.
Hmm.
So in the old days, you might just get someone random. So sorry, but everything you're doing nowadays, you feel you're just like, is it being pushed because it is, or is it being pushed because
There's like a psychological comfort,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
mean that's that's the whole thing is that it's
Yeah.
we've like developed this level of distrust in
Yeah.
everything,
Right.
which is really unhealthy for just as a human being. It's unhealthy. So, and it's funny we talk about it. We managed to get from branding to this, but it's relevant because you create this brand, and we want Berg to be this thing that we say it is, right? I mean, we want
Yes.
ownership mentality. We want the guys to have autonomy. We want work-life balance. We want all these things that we talk about. You know what I mean? We want to do that, and that's all true. But I'm sure there's people that look at it and be like, but like, what's their angle? You know what I mean? And you say, well, there is no angle, which just makes people think like, okay, they don't even want to tell us what the angle is. You know what I mean? And it's just, but meanwhile, all you're trying to do is just differentiate yourself,
Yeah.
which that's the angle. You know what I mean? Like, and we say that openly, like that's the angle. The angle is to be the best we can be. And if we're the best we can be, we're probably better than most.
Right. Yeah.
And then that means that people want to work here. And if you want to work here, you'd probably be happier, and that's better for us. And that's what we wanted in the first place. So we're right back to where we started, you know, but it's hard to sell that as the idea because it's too altruistic. It's too
Simple.
simple.
I don't even know where this one goes.
I don't know.
I feel like this is one of those conversations. Like we're getting pretty heavy into the
It's like a Friday afternoon. It almost
psychology of marketing
Yeah.
and branding.
from a
and
bunch of people that play in the dirt for a
and what's
living.
in a name. Yeah. Wow.
Well, but what does Ford always say? One of
Yeah.
Ford's lines that he
Yeah.
says lately is, somebody who he respects told him that we're not an earthwork company. What are we?
A marketing
A
company.
marketing company.
I think the guy would say that everything is a marketing company, and that's sort of the
Well,
point that we're back to.
Yeah.
I think if we had played this better, we probably could have gotten donations from all the companies we're talking about, and we just have to mention who they are, and everybody already knows. Anyway.
like we've been pretty good here about not specifically saying.
We're gonna have to put like
Yeah.
hashtag ad in like the
Yeah.
notes or something here. 'Cause
Right.
we
Yeah,
really
we need
spent a lot of
some-
time making sure there's no names.
We need some podcast sponsors. We'll have to work on that.
Yeah.
So.
You know what we could do is if one of the guys, anybody can call in
Sponsored
and tell
by
Tracy
Berg Construction.
who it is we're talking about. What
Mm.
glasses does Ford and I both do it? What glasses
Yeah,
do Ford and I wear?
Yeah.
There's boots that I wear. A couple people know
Right.
what they are.
Yeah.
Right. What's the coffee cups we're talking
Right,
about?
that one,
The
yeah.
mugs. You know?
I think the first two are better because the other ones are a little bit more,
a little more obvious.
obvious. But I
A little
think
more obvious.
and it's seeing who's paying attention to
Yeah,
details.
see who's paying
Yeah,
attention.
for sure. All right. That's a good place to wrap it up. So we got some questions out there. Some callers know the answers to those. Get that into Tracy. And we'll catch you guys again soon on another podcast episode. Thanks, folks.